Okay, this is gonna be a hard one.
It feels like I'm skydiving when I text you. Rose petals on the floor outside your bedroom. Sunshine whenever you smile.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I know you guys have been anxiously waiting on another story time video. So here it is. As the title says, and you guys can tell, this is gonna be my experience with the California CPS, or Child Protective Services system. My oldest son was in Child Protective Services custody for a total of about a year, with court proceedings and everything, because yes, I had him in my physical custody. After the third day, the county had custody of him until court was finalized. So long story short, me and my son's father ended up splitting up when my son was only about a month old, 2 months old. He was born premature, about 6 weeks premature. I'll go into a story time of that at another time. He came home from the hospital about 20 days after he was born. He had to be in the NICU for that 20 days. So in that time, I was driving back and forth the hour drive to the hospital he was at to deliver him breast milk, visit with him, things like that. There was only one day out of that entire time that I did not go see him. That's because I had a C-section. I was recovering, just trying to get better, feel better. It ended kind of violently. I won't say kind of. It ended violently. My son's father and I ended up getting into an argument. One of his friends ended up being there. I honestly don't remember what the argument was about. I pushed him, and after I pushed him, he slapped me across the face. So his friend was there, tried to break us up, and him and his friend ended up leaving. When him and his friend left, I gathered my son and we drove to a close friend of mine's house at the time. I was really emotional, didn't really know what to do. I packed up enough stuff to get us through, a night or two. Packed his diaper bag, grabbed a thing of diapers, loaded them up in the car, and we left. Started getting phone calls from him and pretty much just ignored them. So that was pretty much how we split up. We were doing every 3 days. I would have him and then he would have him for 3 days. I would have him for 3 days, he would have him for 3 days. That was going fine up until the weekend of Father's Day came. I actually let him have him for an extra day for that Father's Day weekend because it was Father's Day, his first Father's Day. I didn't feel that it was right to take that from him just because we had a schedule planned out, basically. I went to pick him up the next day and it was a problem. He wasn't going to allow me to see him. That was not going to fly with me. So I called the sheriffs and did a well-being check. My son had been removed from the home that he was at by the sheriffs during that well-being check because there was people passed out on the floor, in all positions of the house. There was bongs and weed on the table, empty alcohol bottles all over the place. And my 3-month-old son at the time wasn't the only one there, the only kid there. My son was the only one removed on this date though. So that happened. I ended up not letting him see him for a period of time, probably 2 to 3 weeks, something like that, just because of what he had done, and I didn't feel that he was the safest for him to be around. That was the only place that he could take him other than, out in public. And we had no custody order set up at this time. We thought that we could co-parent enough for the best interest of our son and, just keep our feelings aside from what was best for our son. At least that's what we thought. So didn't let him see him for a while. I had had a conversation with his aunt. They had spent some time with him over 4th of July weekend, I believe. His aunt and uncle spent some time with him and talked to him and pretty much convinced me to let him see him. So I did, a couple days after 4th of July weekend. I want to say it was the 6th or the 7th of July. I took him over to that house to let him see him. I didn't have any plans of leaving the house that we were at without my son. I did not have any plans of leaving him and my son alone together. But that all changed. I get to the house and he's living with a friend of his and his friend's girlfriend. And the girlfriend is in the kitchen when I get there. Don't really say anything. She already has her bad attitude towards me. I could feel it when we walk in, just because I hadn't let him see him for so long. Went into the living room and sat down, and we were hanging out, talking. I was letting him spend time with him, just sitting there observing. And our son started crying and getting uncomfortable. And I was trying to tell him, you know, hold him up, hold him like this. This is what makes him comfortable. This is what will make him happy. And in doing so, the girl pops off with her little mouth from the kitchen saying, well, maybe if you let him see him more, he would know what to do. And for some reason, that just triggered me. As soon as she said that, I jumped up off that couch, and me and her started fighting. Me and her started fighting so bad that I broke her glasses. Me and her started fighting so bad that her 16-year-old sister ended up getting involved. Me and her ended up fighting so bad that I had no idea where my son was in that house, and I left. I ran out the door once I saw there was like 10 or 12 people surrounding the area we were in. Like, all these people came out of rooms or came out of fucking who knows where. There were so many people there, and it was just me and my infant baby. I didn't know what to do. It was a fight or flight response. I grabbed my keys, I ran out the door as they were calling the cops. I called my mom. I drove to her work. I was freaking out. I was hysterical. I was shaking. I had so much adrenaline running through me. I stood outside and I smoked a cigarette. She told me to call the sheriffs, call the cops, tell them what happened, tell them my story, tell them where I was, where they could come and find me. So I did. There was a sheriff that came and talked to me, and I was smoking a cigarette, and he made some smart-ass comment, like, can you put that out? I'd like to keep my lungs. I was like, yeah, are you taking me to jail? Because I'd like to finish this if so. And he said, yes, but you need to put it out now. So I put out the cigarette, got handcuffs, got put in the back of the car. My biggest concern was, where is my son? Is my son okay? Because this is already an environment that he's been removed from. This is already an environment that's not safe, considering what just happened there. My son was born premature. He's barely 3 months old. Like, is he okay? And I had no way of knowing that. I went to jail, and I ended up calling an aunt and a really close friend of mine to get bailed out. I was sat in the holding cell for close to 12 hours. This was mid-morning, and I think I got bailed out around 9 or 10 at night. My aunt ended up driving from Willits with one of my cousins and picking up my friend, and they got their money together and they bailed me out. I was going to go home to my house, to my mom's house. However, she had told me that I basically would be grounded until I went to court. I was 18 years old. I was living in my own house before this happened, moved back in with her because of the situation. She basically told me that I would not be able to drive my car, leave, or go do anything until I had court. And being a new mom, being in such a fragile mental state, I did not think that I could handle it being in the home where my son should be with me. I had not ever been away from him except for that one day that I did not go and visit him in the hospital. So, yeah, I could not imagine being in the home that he was supposed to be in, having his room right next to me, and him not being there. I don't think I could have handled that. That was why I ended up reaching out to my aunt and my friend, because my mom said that she would bail me out, but those would be the circumstances that would come with it. That would be my payback, my however you want to say, for her doing that. And I pretty much told her, no, that's not what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna be okay with that. So I reached out to other resources. They pulled through, and I got bailed out of jail late at night. My mom had my phone, my mom had my keys, my wallet, identification, money. She had everything with her. I left it with her when I got arrested. Funny thing is, too, I don't think I mentioned this, I didn't get arrested for beating up the girls. I got arrested because my son's father, my ex, told the police officers that I had punched him in the back 4 times. He had no marks. No one else corroborated that story. So basically what happened with that, charges got dropped. CPS took over the whole thing. I never went to criminal court or faced any charges for that fight or for the domestic violence against him. I did get arrested and charged with a domestic violence charge because that's what it was said under. That's why I got arrested. Me and my son's father both had to do multiple parenting classes and support groups and anger management and all kinds of stuff. My son was removed from the home his father was staying in. He could not be there. He was not ever removed from my home, my mother's home. I was just in jail. That's why I couldn't have him, because I was in jail. And because of the pending charges, he couldn't be at the home that I resided, because if I were to get out of jail, I would go home and have my son there. That's not really fair, is basically the way that they put it to me. So 3 days after I get out of jail, I got my son back. They had sent a CPS worker to my mom's house. While I was there, I was working, I was taking college classes, I was in school. I had everything together. I had a place to go, fortunately, after the breakup. I had my mom's house to go to. We had signed a brand new lease for a year. We're only there for 3 months. It was terrible, but I was able to get out of it, be at my mom's house. So the worker showed up and everything was fine. The house was fine. The house looked fine. We had plenty of food. He had his own room. He had his own bed. So they pretty much released him back to me. So we went to court. After court, they said, yes, we went and saw Miss McGrew's home and everything is fine. She's okay to have her son. These are the guidelines that she needs to follow. These are the things that we want her to complete in order to keep her son in her custody. Physical, legal, everything. And then my son's father also had the same rules to follow because he was removed from his home. He was deemed unfit, basically. The both of us were. I was deemed angry and violent, and he was deemed an alcoholic, drug addict, whatever, not responsible parent. So I had anger management that I had to do. I had an intake support group that I had to complete. This was like a 2-part class, basically. You did the intake support group for a total of 6 sessions, I believe. It was once a week for like 2 hours. You sit in a room with people in similar situations with Child Protective Services and explain your story, explain how you got there, things like that. So it was helpful. I actually benefited from a lot of this stuff. So it wasn't bad. It was a really good experience, besides the fact that my son was taken from me and I had put myself in a position to allow that to happen, to allow me to not be there for my son, my innocent baby that I brought into this world. It was just an awful thing. So I tried to benefit from all the stuff I had to do as much as possible. So I did the intake support group along with the anger management. And then from the intake support group, I can't remember what the second class was called, but it was basically just like a group therapy session. You would go around the room in a circle and just talk for as ever long as you wanted about whatever you wanted, usually court related, lifestyle related, if someone started a new job or they're in school, or milestones with their kids, things like that. So it was really nice to have people outside of my situation, outside of my real life to relate to give advice to relate to, like I said, and just understand. And to make me feel like I wasn't such a terrible person and I wasn't alone, that I'm not the only one that has made a mistake, a bad decision that has resulted in a terrible consequence. On top of the anger management and those two classes, I actually did an AMAC group, which is adults molested as children, which was helpful. I could not fit the actual class into my work schedule, so I ended up doing a private counseling session with the instructor of both of those classes. So I got the AMAC stuff in my individual counseling along with extra anger management. So that was nice. I benefited from it a lot. I completed everything that they asked me to. We also had to do random drug tests here and there. When they were getting ready to close the case, there was a worker that came to my house, because they came every month, I believe it was. While you're with them, basically just ask you questions, take notes, and see how the home life is. And I lived in a low-income apartment community, and we had gone through 3 or 4 different social workers, which was really annoying because nobody could ever understand everything that was going on. I could never get close enough to somebody. So we went through 4 different social workers. It was really annoying. This last one that we got, we literally got her for a month as our case was closing, and we had a closing date. I had finished everything, was continuing my counseling, which I didn't need to, still had my job, still was in school. Whatever he did or didn't do was on him. However, I did everything that I needed to do. It was right at the end. She was just looking for a reason to not let me have my son by law. She felt like there was just holes in my story. She felt like I was lying. She felt like I was this violent, crazy, angry person that this situation painted me out to be, and that I shouldn't have my son. So she tried to say that when she came to my house, she smelled marijuana. So literally the next day, I get a call from the supervisor, which was one of my old social workers, because we had to have the supervisor while they were in transition. And she really liked me. I dealt with her when I picked up my son for the first time after not having him for those 3 days. So me and her had a good relationship. And she had called me and said that I needed to come down sometime that day and take a drug test, basically. Because this lady had this idea or thought or assumption about what I was doing, or that what I was presenting wasn't what it really was. So I was like, are you serious? I haven't had to drug test. My son's dad has to drug test, but I don't. But, that's fine. I have nothing to hide. Sure, I'll be down there when I get off of school before I go to work. So I go there. I go to do the piss test. I pass the piss test. The bitch tells me that before, because you pee in the cup and it has the sensor so they can tell right then and there if it's good or bad. And I don't know if they're supposed to tell you, but she told me. She was like, yeah, you're good. Don't worry. I knew you would be. So we wrapped up the case a week later. I was granted full 100% physical and legal custody of our son because my son's father did not comply with these same classes, these same regulations that he had to. He had failed multiple drug tests, missed multiple visits, been late to multiple visits, the whole 9. So he was granted 2 hours twice a week of visitation with our son, with a mutually agreed upon third party. Was kind of just something that I had thrown in there. That way we don't have to worry about going to a facility, or I can know that I can trust him while he has my son because I trust this other person that's there. So that's what he was granted. So a total of 4 hours in 1 week with our son. I actually ended up giving him extra time than the court even said that he should have. I know he likes to sit here and say that I like to keep our son from him when he didn't do the things he needed to do to have our son. He could have had 50-50 custody, 50-50 visitations. He did not comply with what the courts told him to do. I had a decent experience with California Child Protective Services in Mendocino County particularly. The only negative thing that I could really say was the fact that we switched social workers multiple times, which I know it's not something that they can control. It's just kind of the turnover of employees. So understandable, I get it. It was annoying, it was frustrating, just because our case was a lot different than the other cases that that county sees. We'll just put it like that. And then the fact that the last social worker that we had tried to basically not allow what the courts were recommending. She kind of just walked into it as, okay, in about 2 weeks, the mother is going to be getting this, the father is going to be getting this. And she was like, whoa, hold on. I need to check all this out. I need to check all the cracks. I need to check all the seams. When she really didn't, which is fine. She was doing her job. I get it. Ended up, I was clean. I got my son back. I have had him ever since. Well, yeah, that'll be in another story time video. I have my son now. I have had him. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure that you throw that thumbs up and leave a comment, your opinions about this, your experience, what your thoughts are. If there was things in this video that I didn't explain thoroughly, you'd like me to go more in depth in another video, or just send me a DM on Instagram and I can try and explain things a little better. Maybe put something in the description box that I didn't go over that thoroughly. So as always, thank you guys for watching and supporting me, and I will see you next time. Bye.